Hello. This week, you're going to be writing the introduction for your final capstone project. Over the first couple of weeks, you should have decided on your topic, gotten feedback on that topic from me. You should have a pretty clear idea of which variables you want to use, and you should also be going through the process now of looking at how those variables are going to be measured, looking at the factor structure of those variables, reliability, and things along those lines. For the literature review, I'm going to be looking for something pretty much right along these lines. So I've uploaded for you a sample literature review that you can take a look at. And in this video, I'm going to walk through the key features of the literature review so you can see what I'm going to be looking at ultimately when it's graded. So you'll upload this to Blackboard and the discussion board for peer review, so you can look at these, look for these components in each other's literature reviews to give feedback. But ultimately, when it comes time to grade this at the end of the term, these are the things I'll be looking for. So first thing, APA format title page. You should have a lot of practice at APA formatting, but to point out the key features, there should be a running head with a page number. The words running head, capital R, lowercase h, should appear only on the first page, not on any subsequent pages. Please do not turn in your paper with the words running ahead on every page or missing from the first page. It's literally the first thing I see, and it just sort of screams, I didn't bother to format this correctly, which makes me wonder how much effort and energy you put into the rest of the paper. So make sure to nail that down. The running ahead is in all caps, and then the page numbers are over here on the right, not over here in the far right, but right at that 1 inch margin. What else is on the title page? The title. The title is not final project or capstone project or BEH 385 final project for Crosby's class or anything like that. It's a meaningful title, and what we're looking for is for you to at least allude to all of your important variables. I should be able to read your title and know what your dependent variable is, probably what all of your independent variables are too. There could be some instances where maybe you have a control variable like gender that's not an important part of your study that maybe doesn't make it to the title. But in most cases, we'll have your independent variables and your dependent variables. And we're looking for you to use correlational language. So don't use the word cause, effect, words like that. We want to use correlational language like predict, associated with, correlated with. So here's an example. Church support and family religious practices as predictors. So predictors means this is a correlational study. We did not experimentally manipulate family religious practices or church support to determine causality. We have a theory that's causal, but we don't know for sure. So it's a correlational study. Predictors of children's spirituality. So this tells us that children's spirituality is our dependent variable. That's what we're interested in. We think it's important. We want to predict that. And our independent variables are church support and family religious practices. And based on this title, I pretty much know that there's going to be two independent variables. You could have more in your study. Basically, 2 or 3 I think would be fine. 2 is the minimum. You could do more than 3 if you're in a dummy coding situation. It might require more. You'll learn about that later on. But 2 or 3 are typically going to be fine. Your name goes here. Right? So not Joe Student, whatever your name is. And the name of the school goes here. The full name, California Baptist University, not Cal Baptist. And then nothing else. Please do not put an author's note. This paper is being submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirements for BEH, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. It's totally unnecessary on a class assignment. It's kind of weird. Some professors are requiring that perhaps. If they do, that's fine. Don't tell them I thought it was weird. Just do it. But for my class, just leave that off. It's completely unnecessary. All right, moving down, notice we skipped over the abstract for now. Normally that would come next. You haven't written the method section, the results. You're not sure how this is going to be fleshed out yet. So we've left that off for now. That'll come. We'll go ahead and include that at the very end. So now going into the body of the paper, the running head is here. The page number is over here. And here is the title of the paper. So this should be the same as this title. Church support and family religious practices as predictors of children's spirituality. Church support and family religious practices as predictors of children's spirituality. Sometimes people will change their title and forget to change it in one place or the other. So they change it here and not there, or vice versa. Should be the same title. It is not in bold, and this takes the place of the word introduction. So do not include the word introduction on your introduction, just the title. Again, not in bold. Coming next, you need to tell us what the problem area is and why it's important. What is the problem area and why does it matter? So if we take a look here, it starts off by saying over half of Americans attend church or synagogue at least once a month for spiritual growth and guidance. I notice that when we use a frequency over half of Americans, that requires a citation. So a lot of times people do like to start their paper talking about the frequency of an event because it establishes the importance. Hey, this applies to over a half of Americans. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of people. It's an important problem, but it does require citation. However, some believers have questioned the necessity of church. Less is known about the importance of church to the spiritual development of children. In a busy world filled with sports and chores, it is important to know whether a child's connection to the church is crucial to his or her spirituality. So we've identified the problem area. We're dealing with spiritual growth in church. Is it relevant? Is the church involvement relevant to kids? And it's important and relevant because we have the problem is relevant because this applies to half of Americans. So we've set up the problem here in the first paragraph. That's what you need to do with yours, and there's probably going to be at least one citation involved in that paragraph. Next, talk about your dependent variables. We're still in the introduction, haven't moved into the lit review section yet. And so our dependent variable is children's spirituality. So you got to define that. So you have to define your key terms. Do not use the dictionary. Do not use the dictionary. Please do not cite Webster's Dictionary or dictionary.com. The dictionary defines spirituality as blah, blah, blah. That is totally inappropriate in an academic article. We define our key terms in light of prior literature. You're citing a study or a key author on the topic or a series of authors. Give us a conceptual, theoretical definition that's based in literature. Please do not quote the dictionary. So here it says spirituality defined as the dynamic, personal, and experiential relationship between God and child. And here are two different citations backing up that definition. Is conceptually distinct from religious identity or religious development. So explaining what this is and how it differs from religiosity. We say that spirituality has been studied infrequently compared to other aspects of child development. But it's not because kids aren't spiritual. We find that they can be very spiritual. They ask metaphysical questions. Even kids from non-religious homes have questions and thoughts about God. So this suggests to us that it's not just about parent instruction. It leaves the door open for outside influences such as church belonging. So we're setting up the study, what the area is, why we're talking about this, why it's relevant, and what the dependent variable of interest is defined. Okay, so this is what we should see in the first couple paragraphs of your introduction. We'll be looking for that. Next, we move into the literature review, and what I'm looking for here is that you connect each of your independent variables to your dependent variable theoretically and through the literature. So this study has two independent variables, family religious practices and church support. So these are clearly delineated with subheadings. And here we're going to first define this key term, again in light of literature, not from the dictionary. And then we're going to provide some research, some prior literature connecting these ideas, explaining why it makes sense theoretically to use this as a predictor. So family religious practices are defined by the centrality of religion to life structures and processes of the family. Citation. Given the socializing role of the family, it would not be surprising that salient religious routines, such as praying and so forth, should influence children's perception of the relationship with God. So explaining why there'd be a relationship, the family has a socializing role, so it would make sense. Prior research indicates family conversation about God as a strong predictor of children's experience of God. So we have two studies. Guided participation in family religious practices may provide a foundation for beliefs and an opportunity for increased experiences of God. So we have theory connecting family experiences to experience of God, and we have literature making this connection. Therefore, to understand the role of church support, it's necessary to control for the likely influence of family religious practices. So the role of this variable in the study, it is a control variable. We're kind of assuming that it's going to be relevant. There's literature connecting kids' home experiences to their spiritual experiences. So this isn't what we're most interested in, but we do want to control for it, because otherwise We could have a confounding situation where, yes, some kids have church support, but the kids that are involved in church also have religious families, and it's the religious family that's having the impact, not the church. So to isolate the effect of church, or to understand the role of church, we have to also separate out the role of the family. So that's what's going on here. So we're looking for this. In this case, there are two independent variables. So each of them are listed. If I had a third independent variable, I would have another paragraph about that one. Church support, easy for me to say. Church support defined by the provision of love, empathy, caring, and trust by co-religionists. Citation. A sense of community and a feeling of family. Citation. It is theory, to impact spiritual formation because one's connection to God is developed and maintained through reciprocal spiritual support within the church community. In fact, prior research has found significant correlations between adult spirituality and relationships with people in the church and adolescents' relationships with a youth pastor and their spiritual development. So among adults and among teenagers, there's a relationship between church and spirituality, and there's theory to back up why this would be the case. But notice we've sort of implicitly stated that it's not been studied with kids, right? So there's the hole in the literature. That's what we're going to fill. So in the final paragraph, we're going to explicitly state how this study is going to extend the literature. As existing research on the relationship between church support and spirituality has been conducted only with adults and adolescents, the current study extends the literature by investigating whether church support predicts children's spirituality. So you need to specify how your study is going to extend the literature, and that could take different forms. In this case, it's with a different population. Now, your sample is university students, online and professional students at Cal Baptist. That's who you're working with. So perhaps the research has been conducted with older adults or with kids or with a rural population or something out of the country. And so now you're extending the findings to this population. You could also be extending the literature. Maybe you're replicating a study that was conducted before, but there were limitations, maybe a small sample size or some other methodological flaw, and so you're extending the literature by replicating their findings with this sample. Along those lines, you might even be including a control variable, which wasn't included before. So let's suppose that a prior study had correlated kids' church relationships with their spirituality and found a relationship, and now I say, well, yes, but that relationship's confounded by home influences. Now I'm going to control for home influences by putting that into my model first to see if the relationship between church and spirituality persists after controlling for that. So specify explicitly what is unique about your study, and then give us clearly and explicitly your hypothesis or research question. So here, the hypothesis is that church support will positively predict children's spirituality, controlling for the influence of family religious practices. You could also word this as a research question. The research question is, will church support positively predict children's spirituality, controlling for the influence of family religious practices? Basically, it's the same thing, just worded as a question versus a statement. Either way is fine as long as it's explicit and we know what you're trying to test. Okay, so this is what we're going to be looking for in your introduction. Again, 2 to 3, not less than 2. So 2 to 3 pages. So this is just over 2, so this is perfectly fine. We're looking for at least 5 citations. This one has more citations than yours in most cases would, but we're looking for at least 5, and you need to have citations backing up your key term definitions, not the dictionary, and we need to have citations connecting the independent to the dependent variable theoretically. Okay, hope this helps, and please let me know if you have any questions.